What if I told you that there's a 2,300-year-old warning about the dangers of, well, performative virtue? Today, we're diving into Chapter 38 of the Tao Te Ching. And what's wild is that in the oldest versions we found, this was actually Chapter 1. Yeah, the entire book kicked off with this urgent message about what happens when our deepest values become nothing more than a public performance.
So let's just start with the big, kind of uncomfortable question this chapter puts right in our faces. What if all the things we call virtue or righteousness or benevolence, what if they aren't the peak of human goodness at all? What if they're actually just consolation prizes we get when we've lost something far more real, far more authentic? This whole chapter is basically a map of that very descent.
And this just brilliantly sums up the core paradox we're dealing with here. You see, the moment you try to name it, to perform it, to consciously try not to lose it, that's exactly when it slips right through your fingers. The real thing? It doesn't need a label. It just is.
Okay, so where does all this start? Well, it begins upstream, at the source, in this place of silent, effortless being. The text points us to two key ideas here. First, there's the Tao. You can think of that as the unmameable, natural flow of everything. And second, there's Day, which is how that universal flow shows up through you as an individual.
Now, let's look closer at the character for Do, because this is where it really comes alive. It's often translated as virtue, but that just doesn't capture it. Look at the pieces. You've got a foot on the path, a straight, level eye, and the heart-mind. It's about total internal coherence. Your actions, your vision, and your intentions are all pointed in the exact same direction. See, it's not a performance for anyone. It's simply a state of being.
The text describes this state as wu wei, which translates to something like dancing without forcing. There's no ulterior motive, no in order to get something. It reminds me of that famous story of Cook Ding, right? The guy who could carve up an ox for 19 years without ever needing to sharpen his knife. And why? Because he wasn't forcing it. He was just finding the empty spaces. He wasn't trying to be a great butcher. He just was.
All right, so if that's the source, that beautiful, effortless state, what happens when we lose it? Well, the chapter lays out a really clear, step-by-step degradation, what it calls a downstream cascade, that takes us from that authentic, effortless alignment all the way down to a world of forced, hollow ritual.
So here it is, the whole path of decay laid right out for us. We start up top with Tao and D, and as each one is lost, a louder, more visible substitute pops up to take its place. We're going to walk down this path one step at a time, and as we go, just remember this. Each step down is just a consolation prize for losing the one that came before it.
So the first step down from that effortless self-alignment is Ren, or togetherness. And what's interesting here is that the text doesn't say this is a bad thing. Not at all. I mean, look at the character. It's literally two people standing shoulder to shoulder. It's connection. This is when your neighbor's roof is leaking and you just grab a ladder and climb up to help. There's no agenda, no calculation of what you'll get back. It's just genuine. But here's the subtle shift, the first little step away. D, that self-alignment, it was like breathing. It was dancing without forcing. Ren, on the other hand, acts. It does something. It's a move from a state of being to an act of doing. A beautiful act for sure, but you can see it's already one step downstream, right?
So what happens when even that genuine sense of togetherness starts to fade? Well, that brings us to the next step down, Yi. Now, this one's often translated as righteousness, but the character tells a much grittier story. It's a sheep over the character for me, which itself has this image of a spear or blade inside it. This is literally my sheep on my blade. It's a public sacrifice. It's a transaction. And this is the crucial turning point, the introduction of a reason. Togetherness just acts. Sheep sacrifice acts because it's my duty, because I owe a debt, because it shows everyone how righteous I am. This is the beginning of a social economy of virtue. It's public, it's calculated, and as the text kind of hints, it smells like blood and burning fat.
And the final step down, that brings us to Li, or altar rites. The character shows a full vessel being offered at a spirit altar. By now, any authentic feeling is completely gone. All that's left is the form, the proper procedure. We've entered the world of pure protocol. And this is where the chapter delivers its most chilling line. What happens when the ritual is just an empty performance and nobody actually feels it? It doesn't just fade away, no. Instead, someone bears its arm and flings people into compliance. That's the moment social expectation hardens into coercion.
It's when what used to be a shared feeling becomes force.
So what's the consequence of this whole cascade? The text is crystal clear. These hollowed-out rituals, they're not the cause of social problems. They are the very first symptom. They're like the fever that tells you the illness is already there.
The text calls these altar rites the head of tangled threads. Think about what that means. It means when you see people insisting loudly on protocol, on the proper way to do things, on these public displays of correctness, that's your red flag. That's the warning sign that genuine trust and authenticity, the things that actually hold us together, have already started to fray. The text then warns against something it calls foreknowledge. Now, this isn't about telling the future or anything like that. The characters literally mean recognizing things by their marks or their records. It's pattern matching. I mean, think of a modern data analyst, a political pollster, a strategist who can predict outcomes based on past behavior. That's what we're talking about. But here's the stunning critique of this skill. The text says this kind of predictive power is just the flower of the Tao. Sure, it looks impressive, it's showy, but it's all surface. It can't see the fruit, the solid, nourishing root of what's actually happening. And trusting that flower over the fruit, the text says, is the real beginning of foolishness.
So, after this pretty devastating diagnosis of social decay, what's the prescription? The chapter ends not with some complex theory, but with a simple, really powerful call to action. It frames the whole thing as a conscious choice that we can make.
It says the full-grown person, the adult in the room, is the one who can see this cascade for what it is. It's someone who has stopped pretending, someone who can tell the difference between what has real substance and what's just for show.
And this slide just lays out the choice so clearly. The full-grown person chooses to live in the thick, not the thin. They choose the solid fruit over the temporary flower. They choose this, the real, the substantial, that authentic self-alignment, over that, the distant, performative, and hollow altar rites. The final instruction is just beautifully direct. It's not about fighting or arguing or trying to reform the empty rituals. It's much simpler. Walks away from that, takes this. It's a deliberate, personal turning away from the noise of public performance and back toward the quiet of our own inner alignment.
You see, this 2,300-year-old text isn't just philosophy. It's a diagnostic tool we can use right now. So where do you see this cascade happening? In our workplaces, with all the mission statements and mandatory fun? In our politics, with all its performative outrage? Where in your world do you see the sleeves being rolled up to force compliance, just because the genuine feeling is gone? That's the question this chapter leaves us with.